What happens when the daughter of a billionaire, born in glass towers and guarded gates, suddenly finds herself stranded on an uncharted island, with only her pilot to depend on? Can love survive when luxury is stripped away? Can two people from opposite worlds build something real from the ashes of a crash? For Adana Okeke, the heiress who had everything, and Captain Bola Adebayo, the man who had nothing but courage, one flight would change everything. When fate forced them to crash land together, they discovered that sometimes you must lose the world to find your heart. The morning light poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Adana Okeke's Lekki Phase 1 penthouse, painting everything in soft gold. The space screamed modern Nigerian luxury. Cream marble floors gleaming like water, a glass staircase curving toward the mezzanine, and furniture upholstered in ivory leather. On the walls hung large abstract canvases by Victor Ihikamanor, while the scent of imported lilies drifted from a crystal vase on the dining table. Adana walked barefoot across the cool floor, sipping her pineapple ginger juice as her personal assistant, Chika, hurried behind her, juggling a designer tote and a tablet. "Miss Adana," Chika said nervously, "the investors in Port Harcourt have already confirmed the lunch meeting. Your father asked me to remind you that this deal means everything for the River State project." Adana's tone was calm, almost bored. "I know, Chika. That's why I'm leaving early." She placed her glass down on a marble counter and glanced at her reflection in the mirror, her silk blouse flawless, her edges sleek beneath a neatly tied scarf. Everything about her screamed precision. Yet behind those calm eyes was a woman carrying the weight of expectation. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from her father, Chief Obinna Okeke, founder of Okeke Holdings, a man whose name opened doors across Lagos Island. "Safe trip, Ada M. Remember, this is not just business, it's legacy." She smiled faintly, typing back, "Always, Papa." Minutes later, her black Mercedes Maybach rolled out of the underground parking lot, escorted by two SUVs. The morning streets of Lekki shimmered with life, street hawkers selling newspapers, office workers hurrying to the bus stop, and the distant hum of traffic over the Lekki-Ikoyi Link Bridge. When she arrived at the private terminal of Murtala Muhammad Airport, her private jet gleamed under the sun, silver wings polished to perfection, the Okeke Holdings emblem printed on its tail. Standing beside it was Captain Bola Adebayo, tall and composed in his crisp Navy pilot uniform. His dark skin glowed under the Lagos sun, and his posture carried a quiet strength, the kind that didn't need to speak loudly to be respected. He removed his aviator sunglasses and nodded. "Good morning, Miss Okeke." Adana barely looked up from her phone. "Good morning, Captain Bola. Are we set to go?" "Yes, ma'am. We'll be in Port Harcourt in just under an hour and 20 minutes. Weather looks clear, at least for now." She offered a polite smile, the type that ended conversations. "Good. I don't want any delays. I have a dinner with the board by 7. "Understood." Inside the jet, the cabin was a masterpiece of modern Nigerian aviation luxury. Plush cream seats, gold-trimmed fixtures, a mahogany bar, and touchscreen panels for every passenger. Adana sank into her seat, crossed her legs, and opened her laptop. She had no time for small talk. Bola took his place in the cockpit, hands gliding over the controls with practiced ease. Flying her was just another job, but something about Adana's cold composure always intrigued him. She was polite but distant, a woman used to power and the silence of being at the top. As the jet lifted off, Lagos faded beneath the clouds. Adana looked out the window. The Atlantic shimmered below, endless and beautiful. For a moment, she allowed herself to breathe. Then her phone buzzed again. It was her mother. "Ada, my dear," Mrs. Ifeoma Okeke's soft but firm voice said. "Have you eaten? You know how your father worries when you skip meals." "Mummy, I'm fine. I'll call you when I land. Remember to keep your temper if the Port Harcourt board resists. You're not just your father's daughter. You're the future of this company." Adana smiled faintly. "Yes, Mummy. I know." She ended the call and turned to the window again, unaware that in less than an hour, her entire life would change. 30 minutes into the flight, the sky began to darken. Clouds gathered in heavy gray swirls. The calm hum of the engines shifted into a nervous whine. Bola frowned, checking his instruments. Strange, he muttered. We weren't expecting a storm system this far inland. He switched on the seatbelt sign. Miss Okeke, please fasten your belt. We might hit some turbulence. Adana looked up, annoyed. Turbulence? But you said the weather was clear. It was, ma'am. Nigerian skies change quickly this time of year. Nothing to worry about, just safety procedure. She buckled up reluctantly. The plane trembled slightly. Then suddenly, a sharp jolt. The right engine sputtered. The lights flickered. Adana's tablet slid off the table. She grabbed the armrest, panic flooding her voice. Captain, what's happening? Bola's fingers moved quickly across the control board. Electrical malfunction. We're losing altitude. Stay calm. Stay calm, she shouted. Do something. I am. He barked, his tone sharp but steady. The aircraft rattled violently. Lightning flashed through the windows. The sky outside turned a wild, angry gray. Adana's heart pounded. Her breath came in gasps. For the first time in her life, money, power, and control meant absolutely nothing. We're going down, Bola muttered under his breath. God help us. Captain, she screamed, tears streaming down her face. Bola turned briefly, his eyes locking with hers, calm even in chaos. Hold on, Miss Okeke. Whatever happens, I won't let you die. Then came a deafening boom, the sound of the left wing tearing. The cabin spun into madness. The world went black. The first thing Adana felt was the sting of salt on her lips. Her head pounded like drums in a market square. When she tried to move, pain shot through her right arm. Slowly, her eyes fluttered open, and instead of polished marble ceilings or glass chandeliers, she saw towering palm trees swaying against a pale sky. For a few long seconds, she didn't understand where she was. Then the sound of waves reached her. Steady, endless, and loud. The ocean. She turned her head and gasped. The private jet, her father's multimillion-dollar aircraft, lay broken across the shore like a wounded bird. One wing was twisted upward, smoke still curling from its edge. Luggage and metal fragments were scattered across the white sand. Her breathing quickened. Panic rose. Captain Bola, she screamed, her voice hoarse. Bola! Only the waves answered. She forced herself to sit up, coughing out sand. Her hair was tangled, her designer blouse torn and caked with dirt. The smell of burnt fuel filled the air. Captain, she called again, louder this time, her voice cracking. From the thick wall of palm trees beyond the wreckage, a faint sound came, the rustle of movement. She froze. Then a tall, limping figure emerged. One arm bleeding slightly, uniform ripped but eyes alert. It was Bola. Thank God, she whispered, relief flooding her chest. He hurried over, his limp barely noticeable now. You're awake. Are you hurt?
I don't know.
She looked down at her trembling hands. Where are we? He scanned the horizon, endless ocean to one side, dense forest to the other. We went down near the Niger Delta coast. From the compass reading before the crash, I think we're somewhere off the Bonny Island region. Uncharted, probably. No signs of settlement. Adana's chest tightened. So we're stranded? For now, Bola said calmly. But we'll survive until rescue arrives. Someone will start searching soon. He said it with quiet certainty, but she caught the flicker of concern in his eyes. The first night, by sunset, they had gathered what little they could salvage. A few water bottles, a flare gun, some packets of dried snacks, and a blanket from the wreckage. Bola had already dragged part of the metal wing to form a small shelter against a cluster of rocks. Adana sat there, staring blankly at the ocean. Her mind spun in disbelief. Just 24 hours ago, she was on her way to sign a deal worth billions. Now she was barefoot on sand, her diamond watch scratched, her nails broken, her world silent. Here, Bola said, handing her half of a cracked coconut. You need to eat something. She looked at it, frowning. Coconut? That's all we have? He gave a small, patient smile. For now, yes. Tomorrow, I'll look for fresh water and maybe some fruits. Well, make do. Adana took the coconut reluctantly, chewing in silence. The fire Bola built crackled between them. Above, the night sky stretched wide, full of stars shed never noticed before in Lagos. I can't believe this is happening, she whispered finally. I was supposed to meet the investors tonight. My father. He must be losing his mind. He will find you, Bola said quietly. But until then, you need strength. Fear won't feed you. His calm tone irritated her. You don't understand. My life is built on schedules, control. This? She gestured at the dark beach. This is chaos. Bola poked the fire with a stick, watching the sparks fly. Sometimes, chaos is the only way life humbles us. She glared at him, ready to retort, then sighed, exhausted. Do you always talk like some motivational speaker? He chuckled softly. Only when it keeps someone alive. For the first time that day, a small smile tugged at her lips. Day 2. The next morning, Bola was already awake, knee-deep in the surf, dragging a broken piece of the fuselage closer to shore. Adana watched him silently, admiration and disbelief mixing in her chest. You act like this is normal, she said, walking up behind him. It's training, he replied. Military background. Learned how to stay alive in worse places than this. Worse than being stuck with a spoiled heiress? He turned, surprised by her honesty, then smiled. Not worse, just different. He showed her how to gather palm leaves for shade and how to identify non-toxic fruits. When she tried climbing a low tree and failed, she landed awkwardly in the sand, glaring at him. You could have helped me. You didn't ask, he teased lightly. She threw a handful of sand at him, laughing for the first time since the crash. As the day faded into dusk, they roasted small fish Bola had caught using a sharp metal rod from the wreck. The smell filled the air, and for a moment, it almost felt like peace. You're not what I expected, she said after a long silence. And what did you expect? Someone who obeys orders, not someone who tells me to eat roasted fish with my hands. Bola grinned. Out here, there are no bosses, only survivors. The words lingered in her mind long after the fire died down. Later that night, thunder rolled in from the horizon. The wind grew fierce, whipping the palm leaves. Their makeshift shelter trembled. Adana clutched the blanket around her shoulders, panic rising again. Captain, what if the tide comes in? What if? Bola knelt beside her, steady and calm. Look at me. She did. His eyes, dark and unshaken, anchored her. Well, make it through, he said softly. You survived a plane crash, Adana. A little rain won't defeat you. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating their faces. The roar of the waves filled the night. He reached out and held her trembling hand, firm, reassuring. You're safe, he whispered. For a moment, everything else, the storm, the fear, the chaos, faded. Only his words remained. And as the rain poured over them, Adana realized that the man she once called employee was now her only shield against the wild. The sun crept over the horizon like molten gold spilling across the endless blue. The island was quiet, save for the rhythmic crash of waves and the occasional cry of a bird cutting through the air. Adana Okeke, barefoot and wrapped in a shirt far too large for her, stared at the sea as if it might suddenly turn into a private yacht and rescue her. She had woken up in a world stripped of comfort. No silk sheets, no maids to bring her breakfast in bed, no glass walls overlooking Lagos Lagoon. Just palm trees, damp sand, and a man named Bola. Morning, princess, Bola greeted, his voice deep, teasing. He had been up since dawn, already shirtless, stacking wood and sharpening a stick into a makeshift spear. You slept like someone who's never faced mosquitoes before. She turned to glare at him. Maybe because I haven't. In my world, mosquitoes die before I even see them. Bola chuckled, shaking his head. In my world, we fight them every night. He handed her a coconut. Breakfast. It's not fresh juice from the mainland, but ITLL do. Adana hesitated before taking it, her fingers brushing his. A strange warmth traveled up her arm, one she quickly ignored. You really think we'll be rescued soon? I sent the distress signal before the crash, Bola said, sitting on a rock, eyes scanning the horizon. But we're far off the normal flight path. It might take time. Adana sighed, sitting beside him. You're too calm for someone stuck on an island with a spoiled heiress. Maybe because the heiress isn't as spoiled as she thinks, he replied with a small smile. You didn't cry last night when the rain soaked everything. You didn't give up. That says something. Her lips curved, half amused, half shy. I didn't want you to think I'm weak. He met her eyes, serious now. There's nothing weak about you, Adana. You're just learning a new world. For a long moment, neither spoke. The wind carried the scent of the ocean, and the soft rustle of palm leaves filled the silence. Then Bola stood. Come on. We need shelter. If it rains again tonight, that broken wing won't protect us. They worked side by side, gathering leaves, vines, and driftwood. Adana surprised even herself, carrying heavy branches, tying vines with determination. Her once manicured hands now blistered but uncomplaining. At one point, she stumbled, and Bola caught her by the waist, steadying her. Their faces were inches apart. The world seemed to pause. No sound but the beating of their hearts and the soft rustle of wind. I'm fine, she whispered, her voice unsteady. I know, Bola murmured, not letting go immediately. By evening, they had built a small shelter, crude but sturdy. The sun dipped low, painting the sky with orange fire. Adana sat near the flames Bola had kindled, watching him cook roasted fish over a stick. Where did you learn to do all this? She asked. Growing up in Ibadan, you learn to survive before you learn to fly, he said. I was a mechanic's son before I became a pilot. Her eyes softened. My father would never believe I'm here with a man who knows how to start a fire without a lighter. Would your father even recognize you now? He teased. She laughed, really laughed. For the first time since the crash. Maybe not. I look like I wrestled with the ocean and lost. You look alive, he said quietly. Their eyes met again, and in that flickering firelight, something unspoken passed between them. Fragile, new, and utterly real. When night fell, Adana lay on the sandy floor of their hut, the stars gleaming like shards of diamonds above. Bola sat outside, keeping watch. She could hear him humming softly, an old Yoruba song that felt like a lullaby. For the first time in her life, Adana felt small. Not in a bad way, but in the kind of way that made her see how vast the world really was. As she closed her eyes, she whispered into the darkness. Maybe this island isn't a punishment. Maybe it's a beginning. And somewhere in the quiet night, Bola smiled, as if he had heard her. The days blurred into one another, marked not by calendars or meetings, but by the rhythm of the sea and the dance of the sun. Morning brought soft winds and golden light. Afternoons brought laughter, teasing, and endless attempts to catch fish. Nights brought confessions whispered under the stars. Adana Okeke had never known stillness like this, nor a man like Bola Adebayo. They had now been stranded for 3 weeks, and survival had become their shared rhythm. She fetched coconuts, gathered dry leaves, and helped Bola patch up what was left of the aircraft into something resembling a home. But it was more than survival now. It was connection. That morning, Bola was fixing the torn sail they used for shade when Adana walked out of the makeshift hut, wearing a wrap of palm fabric over one of his shirts. The sunlight kissed her brown skin, and her once perfect braids had loosened into soft curls. Bola looked up, pretending to focus on the sail but completely distracted. She caught his stare. You're supposed to be working, Captain. He smirked. Hard to work when my co-pilot looks like she just stepped out of a dream. Is that how you flirt with all your passengers? She teased, sitting on a rock near him. Only the ones who survive crash landings with me. She laughed, and he joined her. The sound of their voices filled the air, blending with the waves, warm and easy, like they had known each other forever. Later that day, a light rain began to fall. They ran for cover beneath the remnants of the plane's wing, laughing as the droplets splattered over them. Adana's hair clung to her face, her laughter pure and unguarded. Bola reached out, gently pushing a wet strand behind her ear. His hand lingered. The laughter died. Their eyes locked. "Adana," he whispered, voice trembling slightly. "You're not the woman I thought I'd meet in this lifetime." Her heart pounded. "And what kind of woman did you think I was? The kind who'd never look twice at a man who owns nothing but a pilot's license and a broken plane." She smiled faintly. "Maybe I was, but this island has changed everything." Rain pattered around them like a soft curtain. Slowly, Bola leaned closer, and Adana didn't pull away. Their lips met, tentative at first, then deep, raw, and full of everything they hadn't said for days. It wasn't a kiss of luxury or lust. It was the kind that made the world stand still. When they finally pulled apart, Adana rested her forehead against his chest, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't want this to end." Bola held her close. "It has to, someday. The world will come for us. And when it does..." He looked down at her with sadness in his eyes. "You'll go back to marble floors, city lights, and a father who expects you to marry someone who owns the sky, not flies through it." Adana shook her head. "You don't know my father. He's cold, yes. Controlling, yes. But I'm not his property." Bola smiled faintly. "Maybe not. But he built your world, Adana. And I'm not sure hell let someone like me walk into it." Silence followed, heavy, honest, painful. The rain eased into a mist, and they sat together, fingers intertwined. That night, as they sat by the fire, Adana rested her head on Bola's shoulder. "When I was younger," she began softly, "I used to stare out of our penthouse window and wonder what was beyond Lagos, beyond the skyline. I thought I wanted adventure, but I didn't know what it meant to need someone." Bola turned to her. "And now? Now I know," she whispered. He brushed a thumb along her cheek, tracing the faint dirt smudge she hadn't noticed. "If we get out of here and you forget me..." She cut him off. "Don't say that. I want..." "You will," he said gently, "because people like you aren't meant to stay with people like me. You belong to a world that runs on names and fortunes. I belong to one that runs on sweat and faith." Tears welled in her eyes. "Maybe that's why I needed to crash, to learn what really matters." When she finally drifted to sleep beside the fire, Bola stayed awake, watching her. His heart torn between wanting her safe and knowing that safety would take her away from him. He looked up at the sky, whispering to the stars, "If rescue comes tomorrow, let it wait one more day." And the stars, silent witnesses to their fragile love, seemed to shimmer in agreement. Morning came with an unfamiliar sound, the faint thrum of engines breaking through the endless silence of the island. Adana froze mid-step, the half-peeled coconut slipping from her fingers. For a moment, she thought she was imagining it, a cruel trick of hope. Then Bola's voice cut through the air. "Adana, look." She turned and saw it. A helicopter circling above, the sunlight glinting off its silver frame. Relief flooded through her like a tidal wave. Her heart raced as she waved her arms wildly, shouting, "We're here! Over here!" Bola tore off a piece of fabric from his shirt and ran to the open beach, waving it high until the helicopter began to descend. The wind whipped around them, sand flying into their faces as the chopper landed. Adana's tears blurred her vision, but they weren't purely of joy. She glanced at Bola, standing beside her, his expression unreadable. The rescue team jumped out, rushing toward them. "Miss Okeke, are you all right?" one of the men called. "Your family has been searching for you for weeks. The entire country thought you were dead." "I'm fine," she said, voice trembling. "Thanks to him." She turned toward Bola. The rescue team barely spared him a glance before guiding her toward the helicopter. "We'll take you both to Lagos. The authorities will handle the rest." She hesitated, clutching Bola's hand. "We're going home," she whispered. Bola smiled faintly. "You are, Adana." "No," she said firmly, gripping tighter. "We are." 2 days later, Lagos. The return to the city was like waking from a dream. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, and luxury SUVs lined the tarmac of the private airstrip. Everything glittered again. glass, gold, and noise. Adana stepped out of the rescue helicopter in worn clothes, her feet bare, her face sunburned. But her father's eyes, Chief Uche Okeke, were filled not with relief, but fury. He pushed through the crowd, embracing her tightly before pulling back to look her over. Adana, my daughter, you're alive. His relief quickly hardened into anger. What were you thinking flying in that weather? And who? His gaze shifted to Bola, who stood silently beside her, wearing his pilot's jacket, now faded and torn. That's Captain Bola Adebayo, Adana said proudly. He saved my life. Chief Okeke's eyes narrowed. Yes, the pilot who crashed my daughter's plane. Sir, with respect, Bola began, but Chief Okeke cut him off. You've done enough. You'll receive your payment and you'll leave. Immediately, Adana stepped forward. Daddy, that's not fair. The storm caused the crash, not Bola. If not for him, I would be dead. Her mother, elegant in her cream lace gown, gently touched her husband's arm. Let her rest first, Uche. She's been through enough. But her father's voice rose, filled with thunder. I said enough. You think because he shared a tent with you in the jungle that makes him worthy of you? He turned his glare on Bola. Men like you chase opportunity, not love. Sir, I would never, Bola began again, but Adana's father waved him off. Guards, escort him out. Don't you dare. Adana shouted, standing between them. He stays. He's not just my pilot, he's the man I love. A gasp rippled through the small crowd of family and staff. Her father's face darkened. You will not shame this family, Adana. It's not shame, Daddy. It's truth. Tears welled in her eyes. You taught me to value power, but on that island, Bola taught me to value life. He treated me like a person, not a possession. Her father turned away, his voice low but sharp. Go inside. Clean yourself. When you're thinking clearly, you'll understand what this family expects. Later that night, the Okeke mansion glowed with modern elegance. Walls painted in warm ivory tones, glass chandeliers shimmering above plush velvet sofas. The scent of jasmine candles filled the air. Everything looked perfect again except Adana's heart. She sat by the floor-to-ceiling windows, gazing at the glittering lights of Lagos below. Her reflection stared back at her, clean, polished, wearing silk again, yet feeling emptier than ever. A knock came at the door. Bola stepped in, escorted by a house aide. He looked uneasy in borrowed clothes. I shouldn't have come, he said quietly. Your father doesn't decide my heart, she interrupted. I told him I love you. I meant it. He sighed. Adana, your father's right about one thing. We come from different worlds. Out there it didn't matter, but here. His voice broke slightly. Here it will destroy you. She walked closer, tears spilling freely. You think love can't survive in this world? Bola, I survived an island because of you. Don't walk away now. He reached out, brushing her tears away. I'd rather leave than become the reason you lose your family. Bola, she whispered, her voice cracking. He stepped back, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Maybe, if fate is kind, we'll meet again, without a storm to bring us together. And before she could stop him, he turned and walked out. Adana sank to the floor, her sobs echoing through the quiet mansion. The walls that once represented safety now felt like a gilded cage. Her mother found her moments later and knelt beside her. My dear, love is never easy for people like us, she said softly. But the hardest choices are the ones that prove who we truly are. Adana looked up, her eyes fierce through the tears. Then he'll prove it. He'll show him and the world that love doesn't care about status. Her mother smiled faintly. Then be ready for the storm your heart will cause. The following week felt like a storm bottled inside the walls of the Okeke mansion. Every hallway hummed with tension. Every conversation ended in silence. Adana had stopped eating at the long mahogany dining table where her father sat like a king, presiding over a family built on obedience. She was done being obedient. Her father had cut off all communication with Bola's family, instructing his lawyers to terminate any contracts with the airline company Bola once flew for. Rumor had it that Bola had resigned the very next day and vanished from Lagos entirely. But Adana couldn't forget him. His steady hands, his laughter under the rain, his quiet courage when everything else had fallen apart. And so, one evening, she packed a small leather bag, slipped into jeans and a hoodie, and walked out of her father's mansion without a word. The compound was nothing like her home in Ikoyi. The walls were faded, the iron gate slightly rusted, and the air carried the faint smell of roasted corn from a nearby roadside stall. Adana knocked twice. A young woman, maybe Bola's cousin, opened the gate. "Yes? Can I help you?" "I'm looking for Bola Adebayo," Adana said, her heart pounding. The woman studied her, her soft accent, her polished English, the faint glimmer of wealth no disguise could hide. "You're not from around here," she said cautiously. "Bola left last week. Said he needed to clear his head. Went to Ilorin, I think." Adana's shoulders fell. "Did he say anything else?" The woman hesitated, then smiled faintly. "He said if she's meant to find me, she will." Adana swallowed the lump in her throat. "Then I will." The road stretched endlessly ahead as her driver sped northward. Adana stared out of the tinted window, watching villages blur past. Markets alive with laughter, children chasing tires, women balancing trays of fruit on their heads. She thought of Bola growing up in a world like this, simple, grounded, full of struggle and dignity. The opposite of her marble cage in Lagos. She had always believed she was free, but now she realized she had been living in golden chains. When she finally reached Ilorin, she checked into a modest guest house. White walls, rattan chairs, and handmade art. She began asking around quietly, visiting small airstrips, mechanic shops, and training hangars. 3 days later, she found him. Bola was bent over a small Cessna plane, grease smudged across his forearm, wearing a plain t-shirt and a cap. He didn't see her at first. "Still fixing things instead of flying them," she said softly. His head jerked up. For a moment, he thought it was a dream. "Adana?" She smiled through tears. "You didn't think ID let you disappear that easily, did you?" He stepped toward her, unsure whether to speak or hold her. "You shouldn't be here. Your father." "My father doesn't control my heartbeat," she said, her voice steady. "You do." He exhaled sharply, struggling to contain his emotions. "You left everything for me?" "I didn't leave everything," she said with a small, trembling smile. "I left what never belonged to me in the first place. All my life I've been living my father's dream. For once I want to live mine." Bola stared at her, eyes glistening. "Adana, you don't know what you're giving up." She stepped closer, her hand finding his. "I do. But what's wealth without peace? What's legacy without love?" He finally pulled her into his arms, holding her like something sacred. Around them, the hangar buzzed with life, the hum of engines, the chatter of workers. But inside that embrace, the world fell silent. News traveled fast. By the time they returned to Lagos together, her father was waiting. Chief Okeke stood in his office, a masterpiece of Nigerian modern design. Marble floors gleamed beneath golden lighting. The walls were lined with framed contracts, awards, and a portrait of his younger self beside political leaders. It was the kingdom he had built, and Adana had just defied its crown. "So," he said slowly, turning his chair, "you chose him." Adana didn't flinch.
"I chose myself."
"And in doing that, I found him." Her father's voice turned cold. "Then you know the consequence. You will no longer inherit Okeke Holdings. Your accounts will be frozen." Her mother, standing by the window, whispered, "Uche, please," but he silenced her with a glare. Adana met his gaze squarely. "Then so be it. Let your money buy obedience from someone else. It will not buy my heart." For a moment, silence filled the grand room. The only sound was the slow hum of the air conditioner. Then, unexpectedly, her father sighed. His tone softened, not out of defeat, but reluctant respect. "You're your mother's daughter," he murmured. "Stubborn, fearless, and foolishly in love." "I'll take that as a compliment," she said quietly. He turned away, hands clasped behind his back. Go then, but don't come back here asking for help when the world shows you what love costs. Adana nodded. I want. 1 year later, the sound of jet engines filled the sky, not from Okeke Holdings, but from Adebayo Air Logistics, the small aviation company Adana and Bola built together from the ground up. Inside their new Lagos office, minimalist yet vibrant with Yoruba art and modern Nigerian touches, Adana sat beside Bola, watching their first private charter take off. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Your father watched your interview on Arise TV. He said nothing, but he smiled. Tears welled in her eyes. She showed Bola the message. He squeezed her hand gently. See? He said, smiling. Even storms end. Adana looked out the window at the ascending plane, her voice soft but sure. We were lost once, but now we fly together. And as the plane disappeared into the Lagos sky, their story, born from ashes, built on love, soared higher than wealth ever could. The sun glowed like a molten coin above Lagos Island, gilding the glass towers with morning light. At the newly commissioned Adebayo Air Logistics headquarters, music floated through the air, a soft blend of highlife and jazz. The event was grand but warm, with white tents draped in ankara patterns, gold ribbons, and the scent of jollof rice and grilled suya drifting across the courtyard. A banner fluttered at the gate. Adebayo Air Logistics, where love and legacy take flight. Adana stood near the entrance, radiant in a fitted cream lace gown, her natural curls pinned with gold accents. Bola stood beside her, his arm gently around her waist, dressed in a tailored navy blue suit. Their smiles were calm, matured, the look of people who had fought storms and found peace. But beneath Adana's grace was a quiet tension. There was one person she still hoped to see. Are you okay? Bola asked softly. She nodded, glancing toward the entrance. I invited them. Mama said Shed tried to convince him to come. Bola gave a small smile. Even if he doesn't, he knows you made it. That's enough. Adana turned toward him. It's not. He's my father, Bola. I want him to see that love didn't ruin me. It rebuilt me. Before Bola could reply, a hush fell over the crowd. Heads turned toward the driveway. A black Rolls-Royce Phantom rolled to a stop. From its stepped Chief Uche Okeke, regal in his agbada of royal blue and silver embroidery, his wife beside him in matching lace. Cameras flashed instantly, capturing the moment that had seemed impossible a year ago. Adana's heart skipped. Her father walked toward her slowly, his expression unreadable. Bola straightened, instinctively tightening his grip on her hand. When Chief Okeke finally stood before them, silence filled the air. The man who once forbade their union now looked at them with eyes that had softened. Not in defeat, but in realization. He cleared his throat. I saw your interview, he said gruffly. You spoke like a true Okeke, and built like a true Adebayo. A ripple of laughter spread through the crowd, easing the tension. Adana's eyes shimmered. Daddy. He raised a hand gently. You proved me wrong, Adana. I thought love would make you weak. Instead, it made you unstoppable. Her tears fell freely now. It made me free. He nodded, then turned to Bola. Captain Bola Adebayo. Sir, Bola replied respectfully. Chief Okeke regarded him for a long moment, then extended his hand. Take care of my daughter, and of this dream you both built. Bola clasped his hand firmly. I promise you, sir. With my life. The crowd erupted into applause. Reporters snapped photos as the family embraced. A moment of reconciliation, pride, and healing. Later that evening, as the ceremony ended, Adana stood with Bola on the balcony overlooking the city, their city. The skyline shimmered with life, and planes blinked like moving stars across the horizon. Her father's laughter drifted faintly from below, where he was talking to guests and admiring the fleet of new aircrafts. Bola wrapped his arms around her. We've come a long way from that island, he murmured. Adana smiled, leaning into him. Yes, but the island taught me something no mansion ever could. Love isn't found in comfort. It's found in courage. Bola kissed her forehead. And we had both. She looked up at the sky, the same endless blue that had once trapped them, now their greatest canvas. Bola, she whispered, smiling, let's fly. And together, hand in hand, they watched one of their planes take off, soaring toward the sun, just like their love.